The air in Golden, Colorado always had a certain crispness, even in early June. It was the kind of place where the mountains loomed like silent sentinels, their peaks dusted with the last of spring snow, and the suburbs sprawled in tidy grids of ranch-style homes. I'd always loved it here, the way the town felt like a hug from the earth itself, safe, steady, unchanging. But that morning, as I pulled into the driveway of my parents' house on Maple Street, the familiarity didn't bring comfort. It felt like a weight, heavy and unyielding, pressing down on my shoulders. I cut the engine of my beat-up Honda Civic and sat there for a moment, staring at the faded yellow siding of the house. The paint was peeling in places, the front porch sagging slightly from years of neglect. I'd been meaning to call a contractor to fix it, just like I'd been meaning to replace the leaky faucet in the kitchen and pay the overdue electric bill. For the last 8 years, I'd been the one keeping this house, and the people in it, afloat. Sarah Mitchell, the family's unofficial CFO, handyman, and grocery delivery service, all rolled into one. I grabbed my laptop bag and the stack of bills I'd promised to help my mom sort through. Diane Mitchell wasn't exactly a tech wizard, and my dad, Robert, was even worse. Their idea of organizing was shoving papers into shoeboxes until they overflowed. I'd been digitizing their records for months, scanning old receipts and utility statements, setting up online payments so they wouldn't get hit with late fees again. It was tedious, but it was what I did. I was the reliable one, the one who showed up. The front door creaked as I pushed it open, the scent of coffee and my mum's lavender candles hitting me like a wave. "Sarah, honey, is that you?" Diane's voice called from the kitchen, bright and a little too cheerful for 9 a.m. "Yeah, Mom, it's me," I called back, kicking off my sneakers and padding across the worn hardwood. The living room was a time capsule. Same floral couch from my childhood. Same faded family photos on the mantel. Same coffee table littered with Reader's Digest magazines and half-empty mugs. It was home, but it wasn't mine anymore. Not really. Diane was at the kitchen table, her greying hair pulled into a messy bun surrounded by stacks of papers that looked like they'd been through a shredder and reassembled. She smiled up at me, her glasses slipping down her nose. "You're a lifesaver, Sarah. I swear I don't know how we'd manage without you." I forced a smile, setting my laptop on the table. "You'd figure it out, Mom. Where's Dad?" "Oh, he's out back tinkering with that old lawnmower again," she said, waving a hand. "You know how he is, thinks he's Mr. Fix-It, but he'll probably just make it worse." I chuckled, though it felt hollow. That was Robert Mitchell in a nutshell, always tinkering, never quite fixing. Kinda like their finances. I pulled up a chair, opened my laptop, and started sorting through the chaos. Electric bills, medical invoices, a notice from the HOA about the overgrown lawn. Nothing new, just the usual mess I'd been cleaning up since I was 24, fresh out of college, when I realized my parents' retirement savings wouldn't stretch as far as they'd hoped. For years, I'd been their safety net. I paid the mortgage when their Social Security checks fell short. I covered the co-pays for Dad's heart medication. I stocked their fridge when Mum forgot to budget for groceries. It wasn't like I was rich. I worked as a paralegal at a small law firm in Denver, making just enough to cover my own rent and student loans. But I made it work. I always did. Meanwhile, my brother Ethan was off painting abstract canvases in his friend's garage, chasing dreams that never seemed to materialize. At 29, he was still finding himself, hopping from one failed art project to another, never lifting a finger to help. I was halfway through scanning a stack of utility bills when I found it. A plain manila folder tucked beneath a pile of junk mail labeled estate plan in my mum's neat handwriting. My stomach did a little flip. I glanced at Diane, who was humming to herself as she sorted receipts, oblivious. I shouldn't have opened it. I should have just handed it to her, asked what it was, played it cool. But curiosity got the better of me. I told myself I was just checking, making sure it wasn't something urgent. That was a lie. The folder contained a single document stapled at the corner titled Last Will and Testament of Diane and Robert Mitchell. My heart started pounding, a dull thud in my chest. I flipped to the first page, my eyes scanning the legal jargon until I hit the section on inheritance. And there it was, in black and white. We bequeath our entire estate, including our home at 1427 Maple Street, all financial accounts and personal property, to our son, Ethan Robert Mitchell. Ethan, my brother, the one who hadn't called them in months, who hadn't paid a dime toward their bills, who hadn't even shown up for Thanksgiving last year because he was working on a mural. Everything was going to him. I kept reading, searching for my name, hoping for something. A savings bond, a piece of jewelry, even a mention. There was nothing. Well, almost nothing. Tucked at the bottom of the page was a single line. We love both of our children equally and trust they will understand our decisions. Equally? I gripped the paper so tightly it crinkled, my knuckles whitening. This was a joke, right? After everything I'd done, every late-night call about a broken water heater, every check I wrote to keep the lights on, every grocery run when their pantry was bare, they were leaving it all to Ethan. My vision blurred, not with tears, but with something hotter, sharper. Betrayal. Sarah, what's taking so long? Diane's voice cut through the fog in my head. She was standing now, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her brow furrowed. You okay, honey? I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. My throat felt like it was closing up, like I'd swallowed glass. I stood, the will still in my hand, and walked into the living room where my dad was now sitting, sipping coffee, and flipping through a newspaper like it was 1995. Ethan was there too, sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone, probably posting about his latest artistic breakthrough. Is this how it is? I asked, my voice quieter than I expected, steady but cold. I held up the will, the paper trembling slightly in my hand. Diane's eyes widened, her hand flying to her mouth. Sarah, how did I what, Mom? I cut her off, my voice sharper now. Find out you're giving everything to Ethan? After I've been the one keeping this house together for years. Robert set his coffee down, his face unreadable. Sarah, honey, it's not what you think. Not what I think. I laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the quiet room. It looks pretty damn clear to me. I've paid your mortgage, fixed your roof, bought your groceries. And Ethan, I gestured at him, still glued to his phone, barely paying attention. Ethan gets everything? Ethan finally looked up, his brow furrowed like I was overreacting. Chill, Sarah. It's just a will. It's not like they're dead yet. Not like they're dead, I snapped, turning on him. You don't even call them, Ethan. You don't help with anything. You're too busy painting your stupid canvases to notice they can't afford their own bills. Sarah. That's enough, Diane said, her voice trembling. She stepped toward me, her hands outstretched like she could calm me down with a hug. We just wanted to make sure Ethan's taken care of. You're so independent, Sarah. You don't need it. I felt like I'd been slapped. Taken care of. He's 29, Mom. He's not a child. He's just lazy. Hey, screw you, Ethan shot back, sitting up now, his face flushed. I'm working on my career. You wouldn't get it. Your career? I laughed again, the sound raw and ugly. Your career hasn't paid a single bill in this house. I have. For years. And this is how you thank me? Robert sighed, rubbing his temples like I was giving him a headache. Sarah, we didn't mean to hurt you. Ethan, he struggles. We thought you'd understand. Understand what? I demanded, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. That I'm good enough to be your ATM, but not good enough to be part of this family. That's not fair, Diane whispered, her eyes filling with tears. We love you, Sarah. We just Got it, I said, cutting her off. I dropped the will on the coffee table, the pages fluttering like a surrender flag. Glad to know where I stand. I turned and walked out, ignoring Diane's calls behind me. Sarah, please, let's talk about this. Her voice followed me to the door, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. If I stayed, I'd say something I couldn't take back. The drive back to my apartment in Denver was a blur. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached, and my mind kept replaying that one line. We love both of our children equally. What a load of crap. Equal love didn't mean leaving one kid with everything and the other with nothing but good memories. I'd spent years putting their needs before mine, skipping vacations, working overtime, dipping into my savings. And for what? To be erased from their legacy like I didn't matter. When I got home, I collapsed onto my couch, staring at the ceiling of my tiny, one-bedroom apartment. The silence was deafening, but it was better than the noise in my head. I kept waiting for a call, a text, something to show they realized how wrong they were. But my phone stayed silent. For the first week, I told myself they'd come around. They'd apologize, rewrite the will, make it right. But as the days dragged on, the silence grew louder, and I realized something. They weren't going to. Then, on day 8, my phone buzzed. A text from Robert. Mortgage is due Friday. Can you send the payment? I stared at the screen, my jaw clenching. No apology, no acknowledgement of what I'd found, just a cold, transactional demand. I almost laughed. They really thought I'd keep footing the bill after they'd screwed me over. I typed back, I'm sure Ethan can handle it since the house is his now. I hit send and tossed my phone onto the couch. My heart was pounding, but for the first time in years I felt something shift inside me. I was done. The next day, Diane texted, Sarah, don't be like this. We need to talk. I ignored it. Then Ethan chimed in, his message dripping with entitlement. You're being ridiculous. It's not a big deal. Just help them out like you always do. I stared at his words, my blood boiling. Not a big deal? He was acting like I had no right to be upset about being cut out of my own family's future. No, I typed back. You've got it covered since you're the one they trust so much. I hit send and waited. A few minutes later, another message from Ethan. OMG, you're really mad about this. It's just money, Sarah. Grow up. Just money. Funny how it was just money when it was his to inherit. Then you won't mind using it to cover their bills, right? I replied. No response. Typical. The silence stretched on after that. No more texts, no calls, nothing. I should have felt guilty, but I didn't. For the first time in years, I wasn't bending over backward to keep everyone else afloat. I'd sacrificed so much, my time, my energy, my dreams, while Ethan coasted through life, reaping the benefits, and now they expected me to just keep going. No. I'd spent too long putting their needs first. It was time to put myself first. The silence was louder than I expected. After I sent that last text to Ethan, telling him to handle the mortgage since the house was his, my phone went quiet. No follow-up from Mum, no groveling apology from Dad, not even another snarky message from my brother, just nothing. For a moment. I wondered if I'd finally gotten through to them, if they'd realized how deeply they'd hurt me. But deep down, I knew better. My family wasn't the type to reflect or admit fault. They were the type to double down. I tried to fill the silence with routine. Work was my anchor. Long hours at the law firm, drafting contracts and organizing. Case files. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept my mind occupied. My tiny apartment in Denver became a sanctuary, with its mismatched furniture and the small balcony where I'd sip coffee and watch the city wake up. I started running again, something I hadn't done since college, pounding the pavement along the Platte River Trail until my lungs burned and my thoughts stopped racing. It felt good to move, to feel my body working for me instead of everyone else. But the silence didn't last. 10 days after I walked out of my parents' house, my phone buzzed while I was at the grocery store, debating between almond milk and oat milk. It was a voicemail from Diane. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the play button. Part of me wanted to delete it without listening, to keep the wall I'd built intact. But curiosity, or maybe masochism, won out. I pressed play and held the phone to my ear, standing in the middle of the dairy aisle. "Sarah, honey, it's Mom." Diane's voice was soft, pleading, the kind of tone she used when she wanted to smooth things over. "We're family, Sarah. We don't turn our backs on each other. We've done so much for you growing up, and we just need a little help while things get sorted out. Please call me back." I snorted, loud enough that an older woman pushing a cart gave me a side-eye. Done so much for me. Sure, they'd raised me, fed me, put a roof over my head until I was 18. But the last 8 years, that was me keeping their roof from collapsing. I deleted the voicemail and tossed my phone into my purse, sorted out. What a joke. They'd had years to sort things out before they decided to cut me out of their will. The next day, Ethan tried again. His text came late at night, when I was curled up on my couch with a glass of wine and a true crime podcast. "Just talk to them, Sarah. You're being so dramatic." Dramatic? That was rich, coming from the guy who once threw a fit because Mom forgot to buy his favorite brand of paint. I typed back, my fingers flying across the screen. "Dramatic? You mean like how you talk to me about taking everything without a second thought?" His response was immediate, as predictable as ever. "You're seriously going to let them lose the house over this? You're unbelievable." "Not my problem," I replied. "It's yours now." I hit send and turned my phone off. My hands were shaking, not with guilt, but with a strange kind of exhilaration. I wasn't caving. For the first time in years, I was holding my ground. The next week, things escalated. I was at work, buried in a stack of deposition transcripts, when my co-worker Lila poked her head into my cubicle. "Your mum called the front desk," she said, her brow furrowed. "Said it's urgent. You okay?" I sighed, rubbing my temples. Lila was my best friend at the firm, a nurse turned paralegal who could smell bullshit from a mile away. "I'm fine," I said. "They're just being themselves." "Want me to tell reception to screen their calls?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, thanks, Lila." She grinned. "You got it, but you owe me coffee for the gossip." "Deal," I said, forcing a smile. But inside, I was seething. They were calling my work now. What was next? Showing up at my apartment. As it turned out, that's exactly what they did. A week later, I came home from a long day at the firm to find Diane, Robert, and Ethan standing outside my apartment building. It was a chilly evening, the kind where the wind off the Rockies cuts through your jacket. They looked like a sad little trio, huddled together under the flickering streetlight. Diane was clutching her purse, Robert was staring at his shoes, and Ethan had his arms crossed, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered, gripping my keys so tightly they dug into my palm. For a moment I considered turning around, getting back in my car and driving away. But I was tired of running. If they wanted a showdown, they'd get one. I marched toward them, my heels clicking against the pavement. "What are you doing?" "Here," I asked, my voice flat. Diane started, her voice too soft, too sweet, like she hadn't spent the last 3 weeks pretending I didn't exist. "Sarah, honey, we just need to talk." "About what?" I said, crossing my arms. "The will? The fact that you left me out completely after I kept this family afloat for years? Or maybe about how you only remember I exist when the mortgage is due?" Diane's face flushed, her eyes darting to Robert for backup. He cleared his throat, his voice laced with forced calmness. Sarah, please. We're about to lose the house. We just need a little help to get through this rough patch." "A rough patch?" I echoed, my jaw clenching. "I gave you a little help for years. And how did you thank me?" "We didn't mean to hurt you, Sarah," Diane whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "We thought you'd understand." "Understand what?" I snapped, my patience fraying. "That I'm good enough to pay your bills but not good enough to be part of this family?" Ethan finally piped up, rolling his eyes like this was just another inconvenience. "Oh my God, Sarah, can you just stop? You're blowing this way." "Out of proportion." I turned to him, my eyes narrowing. "Out of proportion? You get everything, Ethan. The house, the savings, all of it. And you've done nothing. Nothing. It's just money," he scoffed, crossing his arms tighter. "Why are you acting like this is the end of the world?" "Just money." My voice was ice cold now, each word sharp enough to cut. "If it's just money, why don't you use some of it to fix this mess?" His face went pale, his confidence faltering. I can't. It's tied up in investments." "Investments?" I repeated, my tone dripping with sarcasm. "What, your—" "Finger paintings, how convenient." Robert stepped forward, his hands raised like he was trying to calm a wild animal. "Sarah, please. We didn't mean for it to go this way." "No," I said, cutting him off, my voice unwavering. "You made your choice. You gave everything to Ethan. And now that things are falling apart, you expect me to fix it? I'm done. I spent years cleaning up your messes. I sacrificed my time, my money, my life to keep you afloat. And what did I get? Nothing." Diane's eyes were brimming, with tears now, but I didn't care. "We didn't know how to fix it, Sarah," she whispered. "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you chose Ethan over me," I said, my voice softening but no less firm. I looked at Ethan, his face flushed with frustration. "You wanted it all, Ethan. Congratulations. It's all yours." Turned to walk away, but Diane's voice stopped me. "Sarah, please. We're family." "Family," I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. Funny how that word only comes up when you need something. I didn't look back as I walked to my apartment, the door clicking shut behind me with a finality that felt like freedom. For a few days I thought that was it. I'd said my piece, drawn my line in the sand. But my family wasn't done. They never were. A week after the confrontation, I started noticing strange posts on Facebook. It started subtly. Diane sharing memes about family loyalty, quotes like, "True family sticks together no matter what." Then Robert got in on it. It's heartbreaking when your own child turns their back on you after everything you've done. Ethan, of course, took it to another level. Some people only care about money. They forget what family really means. I laughed out loud when I saw that one, sitting at my kitchen counter with a bowl of cereal. Ethan, preaching about family. The guy who hadn't shown up for Dad's 65th birthday because he was networking at an art gallery. They were painting me as the villain, the selfish daughter who abandoned her poor, helpless parents. It was pathetic, but it stung. I'd spent years being the good daughter, the reliable one, and now they were spinning it like I was the problem. Called Lila that night, pacing my apartment as I vented. "They're trashing me online," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "Like I'm the one who screwed them over." Lila didn't miss a beat. "Screw them," she said, her voice sharp. "They're trying to guilt you into bailing them." Out again. "Don't fall for it." "I'm not," I said, but my chest felt tight. I can't believe they're doing this." "Then do something about it," Lila said. "Call them out. You've got the receipts, Sarah. Use them." She was right. I'd kept everything. Bank statements showing the mortgage payments I'd made, text messages from Diane asking for grocery money, even a photo of the will I'd snapped before I left their house. I'd been holding on to it all, not sure why, but now I knew. It was time to set the record straight. I spent the next hour crafting a post, my fingers trembling as I typed. I didn't want to sound petty or vindictive, but I wasn't going to let them control the narrative. When I was done, I read it over one last time. Since my family has decided to air our dirty laundry online, I guess it's only fair I set the record straight. For 8 years, I've been the one keeping things running, paying the mortgage, buying groceries, fixing the house, while my brother Ethan did nothing. When I found out my parents left everything to him in their will, I walked away. Not because I'm selfish, but because I was tired of being used. And now they have the nerve to paint me as the bad guy. I think not. I attached the evidence, screenshots of texts from Diane and Robert begging for money, bank statements showing my payments, and the photo of the will, with Ethan's name circled in red. My heart was pounding as I hit post. This was it. No, going back. The response was immediate. My phone started buzzing with notifications, likes, comments, shares, friends from high school, co-workers, even Mr. Carter, the nosy neighbor who always seemed to know everyone's business. "Wow, Sarah, I had no idea you were going through this," one comment read. "They took advantage of you and then tried to guilt-trip you." "Unbelievable," said another. Even my cousin Jenna, who I hadn't talked to in years, chimed in. "I always knew Ethan was spoiled, but this is next level." By morning, the post had gone viral, at least by Golden, Colorado standards. It had over 200 shares, and the comments were still pouring in. People I barely knew were messaging me, offering support, calling out my family's behavior. For the first time, I felt seen. Not as the dutiful daughter, the fixer, the safety net, but as Sarah, the person who'd been screwed over and had every right to walk away. And my family. They went quiet. No more passive-aggressive posts. No more guilt-tripping memes. Just silence. I could only imagine the chaos behind closed doors, the arguments, the panic. They'd built their perfect little facade, and I'd just torn it down. The fallout from my Facebook post was like dropping a match into a pile of dry leaves. It spread fast, and for a few days my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Notifications piled up, friends, neighbors, even people I hadn't spoken to since high school, all chiming in with support. "You're better off without them, Sarah," wrote my old classmate Rachel. "I can't believe they did that to you," commented Mr. Carter, the neighbor who seemed to know everyone's business before they did. My cousin Jenna sent me a private message. "I always knew Ethan was a leech, but this, wow, you need anything, I'm here." It was overwhelming, but it felt good. For the first time in years, people saw me, not as the dutiful daughter who fixed everything, but as someone who'd been wronged and had every right to walk away. My family, meanwhile, went silent. No more passive-aggressive posts about family loyalty. No more cryptic memes. Diane's Facebook page, usually a daily parade of inspirational quotes and photos of her garden, went dormant. Robert stopped sharing articles about woodworking, his latest retirement hobby. And Ethan? His Instagram, once a shrine to his artistic journey, hadn't been updated since my post. I could almost hear the chaos in their house on Maple Street. The arguments, the finger-pointing, the panic. They'd built their lives on the assumption that I'd always be there to clean up their messes. Now that I wasn't, the cracks were starting to show. I didn't spend my days gloating, though I could have, part of me wanted to, but I had better things to do. For the first time in years, I was focusing on myself. I'd always wanted to try creative writing, a dream I'd shelved back in college when I started bailing out my parents. So I signed up for an evening writing workshop at a community center in Denver. It was small, just a dozen people crowded around a table, scribbling stories and sharing feedback. The first time I read one of my pieces aloud, a short story about a woman who walks away from her family to find herself, my hands shook, but the group clapped. "That felt so real," one woman said, her eyes soft with understanding. I didn't. Tell them it was basically my life. Work was another bright spot. My boss, Ms. Harper, called me into her office a week after the post went viral. I braced myself, worried she'd heard about the drama and wanted me to keep it out of the firm. Instead, she slid a folder across her desk. "We're promoting you to senior paralegal," she said, her usual no-nonsense tone softened by a rare smile. "You've been carrying half the team's workload for years. It's about time we made it official." I blinked, stunned. "Thank you," I managed, my voice catching. The raise wasn't life-changing, but it meant I could finally start rebuilding my savings, the ones I'd drained, keeping my parents afloat. I walked out of her office feeling lighter than I had in months. Outside of work, I started saying yes to things I'd always pushed aside. Lila dragged me to a trivia night at a local brewery, where we laughed until our sides hurt over questions about 90s pop culture. I reconnected with old college friends, people I'd drifted from because I was too busy playing family accountant. And I kept running, my sneakers hitting the trails around Golden Gate Canyon, the mountains stretching out like they were cheering me on. For the first time in years, I was living for me, not for Diane, not for Robert, not for Ethan. Of course, I wasn't completely cut off from their world. Golden was small, and gossip travelled faster than the wind through the Rockies. Mr. Carter, who seemed to have a sixth sense for neighbourhood drama, kept me updated whether I asked or not. "Your parents put the house on the market," he told me one afternoon when we ran into each other at the coffee shop on Washington Avenue. He was sipping an iced latte, his eyes glinting with the thrill of spilling tea. Foreclosure notices started piling up. They're desperate to sell. I stirred my coffee, trying to keep my face neutral. "That's their problem now," I said, but my stomach twisted. That house had been my childhood, my anchor, even if it had become a burden. The thought of it being sold to strangers stung, but not enough to make me step in. "And Ethan?" I asked, more out of curiosity than concern. Mr. Carter snorted. "Moved back in with them. Guess those art projects of his didn't pan out. Word is, he's been trying to sell his paintings online, but no one's biting," I smirked, taking a sip of my coffee. "Karma's funny like that," he nodded, chuckling. "You said it. The news should have made me feel vindicated, but it was bittersweet. I didn't want my family to suffer, not really, but I wasn't going to save them either. They'd made their choice, and I'd made mine." A month later, the desperation reached a new level. I was at home, working on a short story for my writing class, when my phone buzzed with a notification. A bank transfer request from Diane, $4,200, the exact amount of their overdue mortgage payment. No message, no explanation, just a cold, shameless demand. I stared at the screen, my jaw dropping. They weren't even asking anymore. They were assuming I'd cave. I declined the request without hesitation. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Diane. I let it go to voicemail, my heart pounding. Her message was predictable, her voice shaking with a mix of guilt and entitlement. "Sarah, I know you saw the request. Why did you decline it? We're in trouble, honey. Please call me back." I deleted it and typed a response. "Because it's not my responsibility anymore. Try Ethan." I hit send and turned my phone off. My hands were trembling, but not with fear. It was anger, yes, but also something else, relief. I wasn't their safety net anymore. The next day, Ethan showed up at my apartment. I'd just gotten home from work, still in my blazer and heels, when I saw him standing outside my door. He looked like hell, hair unwashed, clothes rumpled, his usual cocky grin replaced by a desperate frown. "Sarah," he said, his voice cracking. "Can we talk?" "What are you doing here, Ethan?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Please," he said, his eyes brimming with tears. "I don't know what to do. They're going to lose everything." I stared at him, feeling nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a hollow kind of calm. "That's not my problem," I said quietly, his face crumpled. "Sarah, please, I can't fix this." Then maybe you should have thought about that before you let them give you everything, I said, my voice steady but sharp. I stepped back, closing the door in his face. The click of the lock felt like a period at the end of a sentence I'd been writing for years. For a while, I thought that was the end of it. I'd shut the door, literally and figuratively, and I was ready to move on. But my family wasn't done. They never were. 2 weeks later, I was leaving the law firm after a late night when I saw them in the parking lot. Diane, Robert, and Ethan standing by my car like they'd rehearsed for some kind of intervention. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the asphalt, and the air was thick with the promise of a storm. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered, gripping my bag. I considered walking away, catching a rideshare home, but I was done avoiding them. If they wanted a fight, they'd get one. I strode toward them, my heels clicking with purpose. "What do you want?" I asked, stopping a few feet away. Diane started, her voice soft and trembling, like she could guilt me into submission. "Sarah, honey, we need to talk." "About what?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "The house? The will? Or the fact that you're only here because you're out of options?" Robert shifted uncomfortably, his hands in his pockets. "Sarah, we're about to lose everything. We just need a little help." "A little help?" I laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "I gave you a little help for 8 years, and you thanked me by cutting me out." "We didn't mean to hurt you," Diane whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "We thought you'd understand." "Understand what?" I snapped, my voice rising. "That I'm good enough to pay your bills, but not good enough to be part of this family." Ethan rolled his eyes, his arms crossed tightly. "God, Sarah, you're blowing this out of proportion. It's just money." "Just money?" I turned on him, my eyes blazing. "If it's just money, why don't you use some of your precious inheritance to fix this?" He flinched, his face paling. I can't. It's tied up." "Tied up," I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "In what, Ethan? Your failed art projects? Your investments?" "Sarah, please," Robert said, stepping forward. "We're family. We don't abandon each other." "Family," I spat, the word like poison. "You abandoned me when you wrote that will. You chose Ethan, and now you expect me to fix the mess you made?" Diane sobbed, clutching her purse like a lifeline. "We didn't know it would come to this." "Then you should have thought about that before you chose him over me," I said, my voice steady now, final. I looked at Ethan, his face flushed with frustration. "You wanted it all? Well, now you've got it. Congratulations." I turned to walk away, but Diane's voice stopped me one last time. "Sarah, please, we're going to lose the house." "Goodbye, Mom," I said, not looking back. I got in my car, started the engine and drove away, the rear-view mirror showing 3 figures shrinking in the distance. For the first time in years, I felt light, like I'd shed a weight I'd been carrying for too long. Back at my apartment, I stood on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker against the dark silhouette of the Rockies. I was free, not just from their demands, but from the guilt, the obligation, the endless cycle of giving without receiving. They'd made their choice, and I'd made mine. And for the first time in a long time, I knew I'd chosen right. The Guinam. Days after the parking lot showdown felt like the first pages of a new book. For years, I'd been stuck in the same chapter, the one where Sarah Mitchell was the family fixer, the invisible glue holding everyone together. But now, with that door closed, both literally and figuratively, I was writing a different story, one where I was the main character, not the supporting role in someone else's drama. Golden, Colorado, was still the same small town, with its quaint downtown and mountain backdrop, but it felt different now, lighter. I'd always loved the way the Rockies caught the morning light, all golden and jagged against the sky, but I hadn't really noticed it in years, too busy rushing to my parents' house or stressing over their latest unpaid bill. Now I made a point to stop and look. Every morning, I'd sit on my balcony with a cup of coffee, watching the sunrise paint the peaks, and remind myself, this is my life now. Work was a lifeline. The promotion to senior paralegal came with more responsibility, but also more respect. My colleagues stopped seeing me as the quiet workhorse and started asking for my input on cases. Ms. Harper, my boss, even invited me to sit in on a client meeting, something she'd never done before. "You've got a sharp mind, Sarah," she said one day, handing me a file. "Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." I didn't tell her about my family, but I think she sensed something had shifted. I was showing up differently, more confident, less weighed down. Outside of work, I poured myself into the things I'd put off for years. My creative writing workshop became the highlight of my week. Every Tuesday evening I'd sit around that creaky table at the community center, listening to people share their stories. Some funny, some heartbreaking, all raw. My own writing was getting better, or at least that's what the group said. I'd started working on a longer piece, a novella, about a woman who rebuilds her life after her family betrays her. It was fiction, sure, but every word felt like mine. One night, our instructor, a soft-spoken woman named Clara, pulled me aside after class. "Sarah, you've got something special," she said. "Keep going. You could publish this." Publish. The word hit me like a spark. I'd never thought that far ahead, but the idea stuck. I started spending my evenings at my kitchen counter, typing until my fingers ached, losing myself in a world I could control. It was freeing, like I was finally giving voice to the parts of me I'd silenced for too long. I also started saying yes to life outside my apartment. Lila, my best friend and resident troublemaker, dragged me to a local music festival where we danced to some indie band under a sky full of stars. I reconnected with old college friends like Jess and Mike, who I'd barely seen since I started playing family accountant. We met up for brunch one Sunday, laughing over mimosas and stories about our old dorm pranks. "You seem different," Jess said, tilting her head. "Happier. What's going on?" I shrugged, smiling. "Just figuring out who I am when I'm not fixing everyone else's problems." She raised her glass. "To that." And then there was Mark. I'd met him at the writing workshop, a high school English teacher with kind eyes and a laugh that made me feel like I was home. He was quiet at first, always listening more than he spoke. But when he read his stories, poetic, introspective pieces about small-town life, I was hooked. We started talking after class, first about writing, then about everything else. He loved hiking, so we started hitting the trails around Golden Gate Canyon on weekends. One Saturday, as we stood at the top of a ridge, the wind whipping through our hair, he turned to me. "You're kind of incredible, you know that?" I laughed, my cheeks flushing. "You're not so bad yourself." It wasn't a grand romance, not yet, but it was easy, uncomplicated. For the first time, I was letting someone in without worrying about what they needed from me. It felt good. Of course, I couldn't completely escape my family's shadow. The Noirs was too small for that. Mr. Carter, the neighborhood gossip king, kept me updated whether I asked or not. "They sold the house," he told me one morning at the coffee shop, his eyes gleaming with the thrill of news. "Got less than they hoped, but they're moving into a rental in Arvada. Smaller place, nothing fancy." I stirred my latte, trying to keep my face neutral. "And Ethan?" Mr. Carter chuckled, shaking his head. "Still living with them. Tried selling his paintings at a local art fair last week. Didn't sell a single one. Heard he's looking for a job now, but no luck so far." I nodded, sipping my coffee. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for them, but I couldn't. They'd made their bed. The house on Maple Street, the one I'd poured my savings into, was gone. and Ethan, the golden child, was crashing and burning. Karma wasn't just a word, it was a force, and it was working overtime. A few weeks later, I got a text from Lila. "Check Ethan's Instagram, you're gonna love this." I hadn't looked at his page since my post went viral, but curiosity got the better of me. Sure enough, there was a new story. A grainy video of Ethan at a bar, ranting to some poor bartender about how his uptight sister ruined his life. "She's so selfish," he slurred, waving his drink. "Thinks she's better than us." The video cut off abruptly, but the comments were brutal. "Dude, your sister paid your parents' bills for years. Maybe look in the mirror," one read. "Karma's a bitch, huh?" said another. I smirked, shutting my phone off. Let him rant. The truth was out there, and no amount of drunken whining could change it. But the real cherry on top came a month later. I was at home, editing my novella, when my phone buzzed with a text from Diane. "Sarah, we need to talk, please, it's urgent." I ignored it like I had every message since the showdown. Another came an hour later. "We're in trouble. The rental's behind and we don't know what to do." Still, I didn't respond. But when the messages kept coming, "Sarah, please, we need you," I finally gave in. Not because I wanted to help, but because I wanted them to hear me one last time. I called Diane back, my heart steady. She answered on the first ring. "Sarah, oh, thank God," she said, her voice shaky. "We're in trouble. The rent's past due. And Ethan, he can't help." "Of course he can't," I said, my tone calm but firm. "What happened to his inheritance? The house? The savings?" She hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's gone. He invested it in some art project and it fell through." I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose. "So now you're calling me, after everything." "We didn't mean for it to go this way, Sarah," she whispered. "We thought Ethan would step up. And I told you he wouldn't," I said softly. "But you didn't listen." Robert's voice came through, gruff and tired. "Sarah, we just need a little help. Just enough to get us through." "A little help?" I repeated, a bitter laugh rising in my throat. "I gave you a little help for years, and where did that get me?" "We didn't know," he said, his voice breaking. "We didn't know it would come to this." "You knew," I cut him off, my voice ice cold now. "You just didn't care. Not when it was convenient for you to let Ethan take everything." There was silence on the other end, heavy and suffocating. Then Diane spoke, her voice trembling. "Sarah, we're family, please." "Family," I said, the word sharp on my tongue. "You stopped being my family when you chose him over me. Now he can deal with the mess you created." I hung up, my hands shaking, but my resolve firm. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. The next day, Ethan tried one last time. He showed up at my apartment looking worse than before. Eyes bloodshot, clothes wrinkled like he hadn't slept in days. I was on my way out, heading to meet Mark for a hike, when I saw him standing by my door. "Sarah," he said, his voice hoarse, "please, I can't do this." "Do what, Ethan?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Take responsibility for once in your life?" "They're going to lose the rental," he said, his voice breaking. "I tried, Sarah. I really did." "Then try harder," I said, my voice quiet but final. "You wanted it all. Now you've got it." His face crumpled, tears spilling down his cheeks. "You're really going to let them suffer?" "They let me suffer," I said, stepping past him. "I'm done." I walked away, leaving him standing there, the door clicking shut behind me. When I got back from the hike, I felt lighter than ever. Mark and I had spent the day climbing a trail near Lookout Mountain, laughing and talking about everything from books to our favorite bad movies. He didn't know the full story about my family, but he knew enough to see the weight I'd carried. "You seem free," he said as we sat on a boulder sharing a water bottle. "I am," I said, smiling, "and I meant it." The weeks that followed were quiet. No more texts, no more pleas. Mr. Carter told me the rental was in foreclosure, and Diane and Robert were looking at even smaller places, maybe an apartment in Denver. Ethan had taken a job at a local hardware store stocking shelves. His art career was dead in the water, his investments gone. I didn't feel joy at their downfall, but I didn't feel guilt either. They'd made their choices. I, on the other hand, was thriving. My novella was nearly finished, and Clara, my writing instructor, connected me with a small press interested in new authors. Work was better than ever. Ms. Harper put me in charge of a new case, and I was mentoring a junior paralegal, a shy kid named Sam who reminded me of myself at that age. And Mark? We were taking things slow, but every date, every hike, every late-night coffee felt like a step towards something real. One evening, as I stood on my balcony watching the sunset, a glass of wine in hand, I got a final text from Ethan. "You ruined us, Sarah." I stared at it for a moment, then opened my photo gallery and found the screenshot of the will, Ethan's name circled in red. I sent it back with one word: no. Then I blocked him. I took a sip of wine, the mountains glowing pink and gold in the distance. For the first time in years, my life was mine. No more late-night calls about unpaid bills, no more guilt trips. Just me, living for myself. They'd made their choice, and I'd made mine. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, I knew I'd chosen right.